So, before we start the actual video, I will say yes, I know Minecraft tier lists are cringe. Yes, I know Minecraft PvP tier lists are even more cringe. And yes, I know Minecraft PvP tier lists in the year 2024 are even more cringe than that. But given that I stopped playing Minecraft PvP entirely, I thought I might make this video as I have been a controller PvP player for over 10 years, starting the community on PS3. So if anybody on the planet were to make a cringe tier list about Minecraft PvPers, I'd rather it be me. And what better way to end off playing Minecraft than to compile every player and community I've ever played with into one video and rank them. This list includes players from 2014 up until the year 2024 for PlayStation, Xbox, Wii, mobile, and PC. And if you are watching this video wondering why you are not on the list, it could be one of 3 reasons. Me and all the players who helped create it forgot about you, you have cheated very hard and weren't good even then, or you just weren't good enough to be placed on the list. Now if you are on the list, that means all of us who made it see you as at least a top 600 player of all time, so congratulations. The bottom of the tier list really isn't bad at all. No matter how many references / people I used to help create such a list, biasness is a factor, so in no way is it perfect. But I would like to think it's better than most given the time it took to create it / the people who helped make it. Now the basis for a tier list and how we determine the placement for each player is as follows. Number 1, prioritizing legitness, meaning for someone who cheats, they are either bumped down a couple of tiers or are rated as they were when they were legit. Prioritizing eras. Depending on the era / platform you played on, could be rated higher based on that. For example, a B tier player in 2016 would be rated higher than a B tier player rated in 2021, as there was a larger player base with better quality. If you disagree with that or have an argument as to which era should be prioritized, please leave a comment. Now number 3, peak / longevity, which means to be higher on the list, you must have either an insane peak or an insane longevity or both. Now peak is over longevity, but playing for a long time doesn't really hurt either. Number 4, one of Bruce Lee's most famous quotes is, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." Meaning a player that becomes the best at one mode will be prioritized over a player that is okay in a bunch of modes. Number 5. Players within the same tier are interchangeable / debatable. Just because one player is to the left of another player on the same tier does not mean we think that player is better. All of those players are relative. It isn't a top 600 player list, it's a tier list. Now, number 6. This is the last one, so if you disagree with the placement, leave a comment explaining why. It's always possible that we made a mistake, but if you come here to hate, thank you for the extra view. Now, all of the players who helped make it will be in the description, along with all of the references and sources we use to help determine. Now, with all of that out of the way, here is the definitive Minecraft controller PvP tier list. So here it is, everybody. The tier list. We have 10 different tiers on this. At the bottom here we have all the players. At the top you get to see how many actual players are here. It says 595, but some of them are duplicates, so it's the exact number is 583. Okay. I'm sorry to the 5,000 Japanese players. Sorry to the 5,000 Arabian players we didn't add because quite frankly we don't really know any of those players, any of the people we could talk to in those communities. We're going to keep this a little bit organized, so we're going to start off from the bottom and we're going to work our way up. At the bottom we have, here we got meme tier. Quite frankly, the players in meme tier, they really shouldn't be on the tier list because in all honesty, these players are actually just way better than everybody else here. I just decided to add them for fun. I'm not going to sit here and explain the reasoning for why every single player is where they're at. If I were to do that, we would be here for another 10 years. Our first player is going to be Lucky Emily of D-Ray, a PlayStation Legacy player. Of Crystal Wolf, a PlayStation Legacy player. Cytrax, a PlayStation Legacy player. The GOAT BD Rogan, he is a PlayStation Legacy player. Judge Red is a PlayStation Legacy player. Sandbrew, a cemu player. Orcqa16, a Wiiu Legacy player. Fat Dog, a Bedrock player. The Blue Gamer, I believe Bedrock, also PlayStation. The PvP Machine himself, Xbox Legacy player. Phase Lord, Dino Beatdown, a PlayStation Legacy player. Thermal, an Xbox Legacy player. IbxToyCa, an Xbox Legacy player. Stampy Longhead, or as the Sweats might know him, Stampy Longnose, an Xbox Legacy player. Midnight, a Wiiu Legacy player. Next up we have Flower Power, a PlayStation Legacy player. And that concludes the list for the 18 greatest players of all time. Now let's get into the actual tier list. So I started off by listing all the Xbox Legacy players in I tier or barely made a list tier. Players were either C tier in very weak areas of PvP or D tier in very strong areas of PvP. There's 24 players here. The players are iHuawei, Waffle Strafe, Man, Such Speed, Diamond Snipes, Advice 2, Joseph P, Dust PvP, Bluedo HD, Team X Bros, Chadley JM, Shats, Replay Bills, IU Heart, Vinix Strafe, X Manny, Mando Craft, Braden Airy, Banana Mayhem, Blockhead, Chris Mob Boss, Winter Beast Mode, Metal Gohira, and Sold by King. Here are the PlayStation Legacy players in I tier. There are also 24 of them and barely made the list. Dren, True Triz, Danaki, Stathis, Bootyan, X Challenge, Upblock, Logistical, Duncho, Trips, UHC, The Troll from 202, Lilybugs 06, Tox, Black Cat, Bullet, Africa Connection, E-Man, Shidex, Lilin FIFA, Lunar PvP, Illuminati, Blacksmith, iStrafe, Swan, and Horizon. Much like Xbox Legacy, these are D tiers from very strong eras of PvP or C tiers from weaker eras of PvP Legacy on PlayStation. You might notice I have True Triz right here because a lot of people don't know that True Triz did PvP a little bit and he actually wasn't that bad. Another surprise I feel like in this tier is going to be Stathis. He was originally planned to be in meme tier, but throughout the research for this video came to the conclusion that he was actually pretty good. Very underrated. Now we move on to the new gens, right? So we move on to the Bedrock players. We have Dark Related, Oxra, Tabby Cat, Adam Plays, Blaze, Copper Ice, Draco, Zyro, Medical Kiosk, Vampax, Dark Eye Cuts, X Larps, Nerf Snipes, Swexty Nerd, Get Good, Brady, Dustybot, Gast, A, Luca World, Mr. Osmic, It's Nova Forever, Crodacity, Debug, Ponty Boy, Young Hesu, Restless Barrett, 26, X Young A. For Bedrock, there's actually 29 people on this list. You might notice that there's a lot of different players from different parts of the community on the same tier. Whether it be cubecraft, whether it be Hive, Sumo, whether it be Skywards, you name it, right? UHC. And that's the most difficult thing about this list and making, and why it took so much time to actually compile a list like this. Not only do we have to compare different communities of players that play on the same version, but in order to compile an all-time controller list like this, you also have to compare different communities of players that play completely different versions, like 1.8 to 1.13 or Legacy to Bedrock. And that's why making a list like this is so hard, because you need multiple people to help compare and contrast the different communities, whether that player played both Legacy and Bedrock, or just whether that player played both cubecraft and UHC, or Hive and no debuff, in order to gauge the difference in competition. And once we did that, we found out that it's better to put, for example, low B tier cubecraft players within the same tier as like D tier Legacy players, or C tier Bedrock UHC players. And finally, for I tier, we have Wiiu Legacy players, which also includes cemu players, because all cemu is just an emulator on PC for Wiiu Legacy. So we have It's the Mecha, Souls 1, ZZ, Nightmare, Awesome Dad, Bubbles, Rakeho, Under PvP, Kira 18, It's a Fact, and Noel. The reason why we are starting so high up, which is lower B tier on Wiiu Legacy, is Wiiu Legacy just doesn't have nearly as much players as, PlayStation or Xbox. And unfortunately, like I said earlier, we're not including all the Japanese players, or else there would be actually a lot of Wiiu Legacy players. And now we start in H tier, where I list all of the Xbox Legacy players for this one. We got Robbie05, Parmesan, IX Okami, Warning, Emojify, Lightning War, KZX Unwarmed, Creeper Farts, Crusades, Cranks, Forkin, You Is Wrong, Salty Asian, CYR Sketchy, I Hate Wednesday, Nick the Human, XSCQ, Impeach Port, Edgar, Zaptor, Kevsta, It's Mexican Slaps, I Flare, Caxi, Lopsy, Strafe Only, It's Nebula PvP, Off the Grid, Rocket Kid 05, UKSX Cobra. Yeah, so ranking like the Xbox players on this list was a little bit more straightforward, because not only was I able to talk to some people that were very familiar in that community, but all of the list and all the tier lists and all of those videos from YouTube that ranked them like top 50, top 20s are still up, and I was able to look at all of them. And for the most part, depending on the era, they were all pretty consistent. And then from there, I was just able to compare the eras and then put them on a tier list, obviously. Notable names here that I'm super familiar with: Strafe Only, right? He came to PlayStation as well. Lopsy29, very cool UHC player. And then also Parmesan, he made that documentary about the PvP community on Xbox. Sweet. So next we have the PlayStation players. There is 31 Xbox players in this tier, and there's going to be 33 PlayStation Legacy players in this one. We have Nisula, Nuzlocke, Acrosion, Jalvarado, Hearted, Save Your Face, Crafted, Bully Breed, DC United, Huawei 618, Obliterated, Liver King, Aquatic PvP, Parasite, Gangsty, I Chosen, Flame Lava, Automatic Strafe, Kawaii Taco, Goalie Kid, Chifobi, Flaco Flame, Kada Net, D Illust, Kane to Pain, Show Swifts, Frustrated, I'm Dank, Strength Enabled, hits like HNGZ, Korin, Kato, and Ulauwu. So there are familiar faces on the list, like Nuzlocke, Accrosion, and iChosen for the PlayStation Legacy side. For Accrosion and iChosen, they weren't originally planned to be on the list, but since obviously they are, I'll go ahead and explain why. In 2018, Accrosion and iChosen popularized the use of the Strike Pack, and then Accrosion specifically went on to cheat in every way he could, moving to Bedrock, using timer, velocity, reach, etc. Getting banned on multiple servers while also chronically lying about the people he's beaten. I don't really have to get deep into it because most of you that are watching, that are in the community already know, but the reason we ended up putting them on here is essentially this is where me and the rest of the tier list makers believe Accrosion and iChosen would be without the use of cheats. Both of them, before the use of the strike packs, wouldn't even be good enough to be on the list itself. But what happens when someone cheats for a long time on a game and then they go back to playing legit, it actually makes them better at the game, kind of like how assisted pull-ups would make someone better at like real pull-ups, right? It's pretty hard to be PvPing for multiple years and not being at least decent. Now we got the Bedrock players for H tier. We got Azure, Tree, Delta Hawks, Raisin, Keybro, Adriel Sweats, Croc Combos, Smooth Light, Show Off Gaming, Brayson, Decenti, Canadia, I'm Not Shoe, Mbit, Lucky Boy, Pius, Toilet, Tumanity, Z Sparing, Lightbee, Zen, Jen Marie, iOptics, Villuminati, Rugged, Safecase, Cloudtray, Water X, Fatesy, Jason, Jake, Xdance, Seouhshroud, Azora, Mannyboy32, Tangle Dangle, Zerpex, I'm Toad, MJ Apsu, Duck Ear Tooth, JM the Banana, Monkey4518, Xmat, Desi, Trendemo, Jesus, This Anime. So this is a large tier for a lot of the Bedrock players. There's 47, and they were originally split into 2 tiers between all the players on this tier list, but we found out that splitting them was too subjective. There wasn't enough information to prove one person was a tier above another person. But we have people from different parts of the community on this one. We have a lot of PC players, we have a lot of Switch players, and we have also a lot of UHC players and whatnot. And finally, for the H tier, we have Wiiu Legacy players, people in like the upper B tier of Wiiu Legacy during their time. We got It's Rich PvP, iThickness, Z-Hero, Comics GH, Cased 5, and Hakaran123D Ha. And now we get to the G tier of the tier list. We have Xbox Legacy players here. Horn, LRE, Stealth, Lamore, Signery, Mystery Man, Gustavo, Assassin, Nebula, Quevlex, Autoing, Savage Stings, Roosie, Vio, Vizu, Exolier, Smacked, Vidoha, and Vuhar. Picking back up on the tier list, I've added the PlayStation Legacy players for average player. And while there was 19 players for the Legacy Edition for Xbox, there's actually 38 players for PlayStation Legacy on this tier, so a lot of PlayStation here. I added someone named Blind to the tier list. I was initially told that he was a cheater, big cheater, pumpkin eater, but after watching some of his videos where he was playing legit, this is where we would put him. We got IZ-True, Zeotsu, Demon Plays, Unlock PvP, Razor, Celestito, I'm Knight, Dracula, X-Native, Lavzy, X-Dash, Z Canterbury, Arnaden, Hamza, Antonius, you bad at PvP, Cian, Vasquez, Strafe, Alice Killas, Merc NMEX, I'm Legendary Kid, Kraken, Z Mary, Elketic, 90, XX Quick Drop, Snake Eyes, and Pal Palski, Until Death, Isaiah, Flago, A6 Lucy, I am Tech, Jitter PvP, Never Circle, Thunder, Snowy. Alright, moving on to the 26 Bedrock players for the average player tier. We got Coup PvP, Andrew Hacks, Evident, Darth Wesley, Mervin, Potink, X Kermie, Narqua, X Kairuto, Astrofear, Zenelli, Splash Potion, Ozaya, Tibsy, Visera, Z Spiky, Iakiro, Logo Brickus, Infinite Rex, Rage, Gabriel, Michael, Z-Flans, Nizen, Melted Crown, Ultra. We have YouTubers like Evident, Andrew Hacks. We also got a very interesting player, I think, who was added on last minute. Coup PvP is actually I think a Japanese player. He could be higher, he could be lower, but after watching his videos, he seemed very good. Just played I think boxing, which every shit controller player plays, but he actually looked pretty good at it. Then moving back on to Andrew Hacks and Evident, I actually used to play with them quite a bit. Andrew Hacks a lot back when Bedrock first came to Xbox. He's actually really good at the game for a controller player. And then Tibsy, a big cheater. We also have Orcqa and Kairuto, who were pretty good UHC players for Xbox controller. Now let's move on to the Wiiu. Okay, I placed Wiiu Legacy players now on the average tier. There's quite a few of them on this tier. Also, I changed 2 things in the actual tier list itself. First off, I had my notes mixed up, so I accidentally put View in average player, and then I also accidentally put Caxi in below average, when according to the notes and according to the tier list and according to the Xbox players I've talked to, that's how it should be. Tazu, Omnivoyant, Kali, Kenny, Slicey, Tintin and Ultrafy, The Bird, Smash Hit, Flares Plays, Dino Rock, Noob Rager, Celigica, Mashik, Yo Boy Fox, Red PvP, and Josh, Cubecraft, Curie Cafe, Felpa Verde, Curtsy, 0123, Echo, Softly, and Kane. Okay, so starting off for the Xbox Legacy players, for the good player tier list, we have Vio, Veplas, Kuzan, Pankoga, Vemzy, Zays, CXWUI, TKY, Fire Aspect, Ghost Fear, Moby, Zano, Moger, Fire Sign, Jizra, X Complexify, X Chris Strafes, Missoura, X Phantom Strafes, Phoenix Hawks, I Have Reach, Ravinful, Zypher, Dude Tiger, Zippy. So this list, to be honest, can be seen as pretty controversial. There's players from many different eras on Xbox Legacy in this one list. Despite it being a smaller list for Xbox Legacy players, you might make the argument like, hey, the game's evolved, so these players got better. Well, that's not what this list is all about. When we're comparing players from different eras, yes, we can take into an account maybe the game's evolved, so players got better in general. But the main thing to consider was how good was that player compared to the era that they played in. Not only that, but we also have people like Dude Tiger, Veplos, and probably many other on this list that have been accused of cheating or just blatantly cheat. But when we take into consideration culture of PvP where everybody cheats, it's pretty difficult to rank them based on legitness. Like a lot of these players, you can argue would be higher if we did account the use of RF. Because they RF, obviously they're going to be lower on the list. And some of these players use RF, but they're also pretty good legit. God damn, we got a big list for PlayStation Legacy players. We got It's Wealthy, Toggle Reach, Wire Wrecked, Chaos, Zip Blacking, W Kong, Ignahand, Zetsay, Ken Vizo, Mumi, Piscon K, Clunny, Rhyme, I Click Spam, Salvation, Zombie Slayer, Res Make It, Foul, Meteor, Samuel UHG, Just Commentate, Bobo Trickshotter, Dr. Easter, The Gator, Killer Wolf, I Like My DNA, Oh Robbie, Zico, Bounder, Yuyo, Conte, Custom Client, JDog23, Sanzan, Ben, K-Ball, Delze, Kraken Lego, Axel Paxel, Vectaz. The reason why this tier is so big for PlayStation Legacy players, I think there's 39 of them, is because we have players from 2014, A-tier players from that era, and then we have like A-tier players from 2020 to 2024, and then we have B-tier players from like 2016 to late 2015, all in one tier list. Alright, following tradition, now we have the Bedrock players on good player tier. The PlayStation players, I also forgot Xyluri. So there's Xyluri, there he is. So it's Dr. Chase, Classics, Matthew, Coda, Steve Gut, NoFi, Pico Gamer, ZJaker, Luvo, 2001, Void Can't Combo, Coolin, Swimfan, AxeBodySpray, J2 Drippy, Bralexenic, Zoop, I Died, Ayuki, VQ3T. This Bedrock list might be a little bit controversial too. We have players like ZJaker and Luvo in the same tier as Bralexenic and Void Can't Combo. One of the things I mentioned in the beginning of the video was it's better to excel in one game mode than it is to be okay in a bunch of different game modes. While ZJaker and Luvo, they excel in Bridge, which is a PvP game mode that takes a lot of skill to master. Not only do they excel in that game mode, but they're probably the 2 best players on the entire list in that game mode. Players like Coolin, not the best controller player in raw PvP, but once again, he excelled in SG. We have another very interesting player, the last one, VQ3T. The videos I've seen, he could be a lot higher than this tier. He's just one of those players where I guarantee you that by the time this tier list is probably outdated, he's going to be a lot higher. There's just not enough information for us as the tier makers to put him higher yet, just because of the rate of how fast he's improved. Now let's go to the Wiiu Legacy players. Finally, we got the Wiiu Legacy players for the good player tier list. We have Derpy Beast, Mon, CP, Kooky, KS, Bigo, Lobi, I'm Legit, Wenny, Magma, Split Persona, St. Louis, Classed, Bats Boys, Dark James Pitt. So some of these players are pretty underrated as they're from Wiiu Legacy, and then some of these players like Kuki, KS, they're all from the Japanese community. I was actually able to get a couple of players from there. I think that's holding them back is their lack of versatility when it comes to game modes, and they don't do it as competitively. Alright, and now we got the Legacy Xbox players for underrated tier, which is a tier above good player. Starting from now on, there's going to be a lot less players within each tier. Pretty much all of these players from underrated or above were either high A or S tier at one point or another. So we got Mr. Random, who was S tier throughout Xbox 360, It's Threats, who is S tier in 2021, and Orcqa, A tier in 2017, Bedrock, S tier 2019, and Vimzy, S tier 2020. Our Bedrock players might know as It's Threats. He is one of the best Bedrock players period, keyboard and mouse, but he was originally a player from Xbox. Okay, so as soon as I say there's not going to be nearly as much players as there was in the other tiers, starting now, I put 38 PlayStation players. And the main reason for PlayStation having more players that are higher up on the all-time list is just because PlayStation has a way more fleshed out community internationally. So for example, South America, huge. Germany, ginormous. France, ginormous. They have huge communities, whereas in Xbox, the communities are not as much fleshed out as they are on PlayStation. Alright, so here are the players. Clutch Rising, Colt James, and Amerikill, they're 2014 S-tier players. Akakro and Kaiser are 2018 A-tier players. We got Bebo, just an S-tier German, 1.9. BX Keen, he's an S-tier New Gen PS3 player. Flovita, he's S-tier early 2015. Strike Zone, high A-tier 2014. Mr. Eggs, S-tier. No debuff 2014. It's only Dylan. High A tier early 2015. Standards A tier from 2014. He had a very good longevity. Killora A tier early 2015. Dead Gamer A tier 2016. Logan Rock same thing, A tier 2015 through 2016. He's kind of like moving out of A and B tier. And then Henris, Eagle Freak, Lucio, I'm Fable, high A tier Germans. Throughout 2015 to 2016, even 2017, we have Darkrai, B to A tier, like high B tier 2016, over NGA and Debrin, they're low A tiers 2018 to 2019, XXM7, 1.9 A tier, Xsheetix, low A tier 2016, Artak, Kakashi, Kevin, Trexel, Ami, Napoli, Inus, Reki, Perplex, Sage, Sasuke, Shades, all A tier to low S from different eras, mostly 1.9. So we got 5 Bedrock players on the underrated tier. They include ZxTime, who is a high A to low S tier in many different game modes through the early portions of Bedrock. Prof, who is high S tier on cubecraft and played using a VR headset, contributing to its placement. Delucio, S tier cubecraft new gen player. Mcpe, consistent A tier no debuff player on Bedrock. And finally Nazarage, which I have listed as a high A tier mobile controller no debuff main on Bedrock. So we have 7 Nintendo players on here. ZmcNirmal is in the call with me. I'll go ahead and let him explain the placements for each of these players.
For the first player, we have Oppo, who's been S tier for nearly 5 years on Switch. Next player is Daze, who's also been S tier for a few years, in contention for top 3 as a controller Switch player right now. Next player is Dog170, who was S tier in PS4 and peaked S tier while being legit on PS3 and also being A tier on cemu. Next player is Half Self, who for about 3 years has been S tier on PS3. He's a new gen cemu player and he's just S tier on cemu with low FPS, easily the best low FPS player. Smash It, he's been consistent S tier from 2017 to 2023. In contention for top 1/top 2 for many years. Paper Bunny was an OG S tier from 1.8 to early 1.9, the original top 1 player. Next player is Kaizuki, S tier from 2021 to 2022, took a big break and then coming back in spring of 2023, A tier to S tier due to the amount of breaks he would take in between.
So in the great player category for Xbox Legacy, we have Taizuko, Acidic Mix, Simist, Zertify, and Luso. So Taizuko, Zertify, and Luso, 3 players who were more or less S tier on Xbox Legacy in 2017, and then Acidic Mix and Simist were S tier or high A tier throughout big parts of 1.8. Acidic Mix being one of the best world UHC players of all time on Xbox Legacy. And for the PlayStation Legacy tier for great player, we have a whole bunch of high A/low S tiers from the years 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and everything after that. Every player here from 2020 to 2024 legacy is high S. We have Oxlug, we have the players are Adorius Elias, Geldon 69A, Oxlug, Lacutine, Blue Impacti, Alex Real, by Rays, Arcax, Shiny Zebra, Styler, Itachi, Jammy, Z Slayer, Mikey J, V Mason, Madara, V Strafe MC, Dexter Captain, Ryan X, YZ Tour, Kaizura, Ants, Nexus, Infamous, Ryloth, Balls of Steel, Funten, Wilkinson, Zarin, I'm Sam, Man's Not Hot, Salim Babas. I want to make one mention in this tier, Balls of Steel. His placement is also contributed to the fact that he was the best controller player of all time in Minecraft Paintball League. Just from that statement alone, he can arguably be a tier higher. There's a lot of PS3 players here from 2016 all the way to 2024 that a lot of people don't know about. The PS3 community is actually larger than the Xbox community and arguably just as large as the PlayStation 4 community. The biggest reason for that is PlayStation 3 is the only console the entire continent of South America can afford. Sweet, now we got the Bedrock players for the great player tier. There's 4 of them, so Rezi, Kenny, Mr. Monopoly, and Flink. Flink was an S tier, no debuff controller player that early portions of Bedrock. He also used to play Legacy on PlayStation. Mr. Monopoly, he's current, so he's actually the best Skywars player. By far, I don't even think it's close. Kenny is the all-time best cubecraft player as agreed upon by all the tier lists I've watched. And then Rezi, he kind of does it all. He's pretty above average in everything. And lastly, we got one Wiiu Legacy player named V12 who was originally a PlayStation high tier player and then came to cemu or Wiiu Legacy and was the best French player. We got Xbox Legacy players for Legend tier. So we got Senadio, Seouhshroud, Dokkan, Juxi, and Humanoids. Senadio is just someone who inspired a whole culture around Apple PvP in S tier for the longest time, for multiple years. Seouhshroud, despite him being the weirdest kid I ever met in my life, he's still S tier in a community where 90% of players RF, and he's legit. He's able to beat just about every single player that uses an RF as a legit player. Alright, now we got the PlayStation Legacy players for Legend tier, and once again, the only reason why there's so many more PlayStation players is just because there's a lot more community. Players are Golden Ketty, LV1, OMG It's Popey, Vopadoge, It's Strace, Yen, Phineas, Kaizuko, OMG It's Cryptic, Terrapart Pony, Zenith UHG, Babby, Blatty, Elephant Milker, Jose, Zason. These players I'm not too familiar with. A lot of it had to do with Fyiax's or Static's input on the tier list, who he's been PvPing for almost about as long as I have actually. A lot of these players throughout PS3 or throughout later stages of PS4 were top S tier. I will like to comment on some of the players I do know. We got Phineas, who same longevity, who's always been a solid German player. We have OMG It's Cryptic and Terrapart Pony, who their peaks in late 2015 were some of the most dominant peaks I've ever seen. Most of the community accused them of cheating. And also rest in peace Terrapart Pony, who's one of my best friends back when I used to play. And then we got Zenith UHG, who is arguably the best world UHG player on PlayStation. Despite him not caring about PvP as much after during 2016. And then we got Jose, super insane peak on PlayStation, along with Wilkinson and all of them. He was one of the legit players who was able to beat a lot of the RF players. Alright, now we got the Bedrock players for Legend tier. We have Fast, OP Cranker, Peppa, Y-Pain, Born, Face, Bufo, Fresh to Pig, Why You Mad, EjuCad. You might think to yourself right now, well, what Bedrock players could possibly be above these players right now? Well, I'll tell you who. None. For Bedrock, these are the S tier players. These are God of PvP for Bedrock. These 10 players. Now, these 10 players, at their peak, were all the best at something. Between all of these players' accomplishments, raw PvP, the success they had in their game modes, it's not one of these Bedrock players that I can confidently put above another one. And the reason why Undisputed and God of PvP don't have any Bedrock players is just there's an era difference. Or we just put people on those 2 tiers who clearly stood apart from everybody else. Whereas on Bedrock, these 10 players don't really dominate in literally every single mode. They all have their own mode that they do. Whereas on the 2 tiers above it, there's legacy players that you put them in every single mode and they're top of S. And all it is, it's just the era difference, right? The eras were just thousands of controller PvPers wanting to be the best, and it was just full-on PvP, only PvP. Where Bedrock has like a bigger community, the PvP community itself is a lot smaller, especially with like controller players. And lastly, for the legend tier, we have Albanita, who is unanimously agreed upon between all Japanese players. This guy is the best when it comes to, new gen Japanese PvP. A lot of people who know him might be like, wait a second, this guy is a keyboard and mouse player. But according to all the Japanese players I've talked to, he's virtually no different between keyboard and mouse and controller. On controller, he's just as good as keyboard and mouse, right? So the Xbox player for Undisputed is going to be AxeBodySpray. The Undisputed #1 and God of PvP tiers are going to be a little bit more up for interpretation. The biggest difference between the two tiers, I would say, is just going to be longevity and raw PvP. In terms of influence, however, there are a bunch of players on this tier who influence the community more than anyone else. One of those players is AxeBodySpray, someone who literally started the UHC community on Xbox, the father of Xbox PvP when it comes to NA. Much like how I grew the community on PlayStation, he did the same but for Xbox. And in terms of just world UHC, I believe AxeBodySpray, with the exception of maybe one other controller player up here, is the GOAT on controller. Here we got the Undisputed #1 for PlayStation Legacy, and once again, the reason why there are more players here than Xbox is because on PlayStation, America is actually one of the smaller communities when it comes to PvP. I'm not going to go into detail as I'm actually not that familiar with some of these players, but some of the helpers of the tier list are, and they laid out solid arguments that meet the criteria for why a lot of these players belong here. Some players I do know are Zycles, Smacked, Despo, Zigzag. Say what you want about Zycles. A lot of people say he's overrated, which is, I believe, unsubstantiated. Barely lost 1v1s. One of the greatest influences on PlayStation when it comes to UHC and PvP in general. Say what you want about him being host carried and poor movement or whatever people like to say, but in an era where controller PvP peaked in competitiveness, he never ducked fights. And with Smacked, while not as much as an influence as Zycles, with the raw PvP, he was insane. And Despo, the original best French player, and Zigzag, a highly underrated German who was actually pretty good in 1.8 and proven to be one of the best in early 1.9 before, the rise of the strike pack. Lastly, for Undisputed, we got ZmcNirmal, who is a Nintendo Legacy player and the best Nintendo Legacy player of all time. In terms of longevity, peak, his ability to switch platforms, all give him solid arguments for God of PvP. Even today, I believe he's still active and arguably the best player on emulator Legacy PvP. There's just two reasons why we don't have him at God of PvP. The first one is best player on Nintendo, right? Nintendo's much smaller of a community, and then also his lack of playing when it comes to 1.8, right? 1.9 is just a completely different game. To start off God of PvP, the greatest of all time, for Xbox we have two players, the original Chain and Kyvan. Chain, the influence he had in growing the Gapple and no debuff, and also being the original GOAT of that community. That community, which still persists today, and no, I'm not talking about Chain as people might know him today, those are two different people. The original Chain gave the new Chain his gamertag, who is also known as Senadio, who is a very good player in his own right. And Kyvan, the undisputed GOAT of 1.8 PvP on Xbox, and when I mean undisputed, I mean it is almost universally agreed upon, and that is in the most competitive, largest era of Minecraft PvP. A lot of new gen Xbox players like to say, if I played back then, I would be the best, or things like that. The tier list doesn't even work that way, because, of course, in Minecraft, just like every other game or every other field, the game itself evolves and players get better over time. The only reason players today can become so good is because they are standing off the shoulders of giants from the past. That's like saying your average physicist of today is smarter than Isaac Newton because your average physicist knows more knowledge. And that would just be an absurd take. If Kyvan played today, he would become the best, just like if Isaac Newton was a physicist today, he would become the best in his field as well. Finally, we have God of PvP for PlayStation, the greatest of all time. Everyone who knows IbxToyCa knows this is his rightful spot, as well as the other people here who built the community beginning from PlayStation and South America. Zephyr, the GOAT from Germany, two NA players in Twotomahawk and I'm Barely Trying, a French GOAT and Dragon X22, And finally, the only player here who wasn't that good in the golden years of 1.8, his longevity and accomplishments when it comes to 1.9, both PlayStation and Xbox, and into Bedrock, we believe warrants him a spot here in God of PvP. Obviously, I didn't rank myself here, that would be counterintuitive, but instead all the helpers of the tier list did. This is going to be my last Minecraft video I'll ever upload. I'll turn this channel more into like a IRL vlog channel. So here it is, every tier for you to see. But like I said, everything will also be in the description. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.